So, fasten your seatbelts, tighten your chin straps. You're going to get wet right now. Please welcome Patrick Dixon to the dais.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your kind welcome, and it's a delight to be back here again in this beautiful, amazing, vibrant, cosmopolitan, culturally rich city of Boston. And I want to take us through a very quick view of the future. I'm going to spin my way through it. You've got the copy of the book. All the slides are online. And I also want to welcome those who are watching this webcast right now. Wherever you are in the world, we wish you well, and we send greetings to you from this conference. And we hope that you feel a part of this extremely significant time. I believe it is a significant time in human history. It's a significant time in education. It's a significant time in our people's lives. My thesis is this, that if we broaden people's worlds, then we change their future. Either we take hold of the future, or the future takes hold of us, as I keep on saying to our own children. Our 16-year-old lad is the last one still in high school. I say, either you work for the grade, or you ain't going to get it. The world is cause and effect. So please don't think of the future some great thing that's going to make you a victim of circumstances, that somehow it was some mega trend that did in your grade. Listen, my friend, the future is a great canvas. You are a person of history. You are a history maker, and you as teachers are history creators. Why? Because you are building the future into the people that you teach. And they are the future of America. They are the future of corporations, organizations, of government. And what an exciting privilege it is to be a parent or to be a teacher, and to have within your grasp the opportunity to influence people for the totality of their lives, however long that will be. What an amazing profession. I'm going to slice the conversation into 6 pieces. They spell the word future, as has been said. And the first is fast, to do with the speed of change. And one of the challenges for you is that the world can change even faster than you can draw up a syllabus. And that, my friends, is your greatest challenge. It really is. And, I contribute. My books are used as resource materials and syllabuses, and I think there's been 10 million different people come to the site. At least 5 million of them are in your schools. In fact, not quite that many, but 60% of that 5 million are high school or college students from America. And they're using the materials on this site, and it's a struggle for me to keep them up to date, because, like you, the world changes. My world is on the outer edge of this radar screen, not on the center, not on the syllabus materials. My world, in working with large corporations, is the area of uncertainty. It's wild cards, low probability, but high impact risks. 1% probability per year. But if you have enough of those kinds of wild cards in a business or an organization or even a school, then the chances are you get hit by a significant number of them every single year. And you think, how unlikely can you be? And how unlucky can you be? We've had this and this and this, and we've had to spend so much time looking at these wild cards, these unexpected events. But my friend, that is what the future is. I'll give you an example of one that may not any longer be a wild card, sadly, and that's bird flu. We don't know what the risk of this virus is in terms of mutating and hopping rapidly between humans, but the World Health Organization puts that risk. What do you think the risk is? No one knows the answer, but what do you think the risk is of bird flu mutating inside someone who has ordinary flu and coming out as an infectious agent that can sweep rapidly through all the schools in America? What is the risk of that happening at some point in the next 5 years? What do you think?
5%.
5%? There's no right answer. You can't be wrong here. 30%? 99%. The World Health Organization says 100% risk. And by the way, when it starts to spread, you'll discover something else about the future. The future, my friends, is not about bird flu, not about history, not even about September 11. So the future is about emotion. And emotional reactions to events will shape it. And bird flu is a good example. Even if bird flu turns out to be just as dangerous as ordinary flu, no more, we will see an emotional reaction when that virus starts to spread. For sure. when 6 people blew themselves up on the metro in my city of London, and there was an emotional reaction. People said to me, "Are you still happy to live in London?" I said, "My friend, I have worked out that even if a suicide bomber blew themselves up every single day, it would be safer for me to travel on the metro than to walk home." It's an emotional thing. And we need to understand emotion. And how people will think, how these kids you're entrusted with will feel about life when they get to the age of 35. That will control the choices that they make and the world they live in. Emotion is the reason why 80% of under 24-year-olds are much more likely to send a text message in Europe than to use the phone. Emotion is the reason why my daughter here, our youngest daughter here, Elizabeth, at the moment has 12 chat screens open on her screen at once. Why? Because she says, "Phone calls, Dad, they're so last century." Now, you think, well, there's something to do with technology. It's nothing to do with technology. It's all to do with emotion. I haven't got time to go into the reasons why. You can ask me about it if you want, if we've got time later on. What is it that is the emotional pull? Why is chat such an intense medium? Why is it that this is 100 times more powerful as a communication device in terms of passion and feeling and intimacy than anything that can happen on a phone between teenagers? Why is it? Now, it's getting inside those kind of questions that helps us to understand syllabus and preparation of people for the future. By the way, don't believe market research. Either your pupils, polling them, or the parents, even worse. Why? Because they change their minds. You can only tell from market research or listening to your customers, your clients, your consumers, what they think about yesterday, or what they think yesterday about tomorrow. But they'll change their minds, my friends. I want to show you a video which is a lesson of life. This video was banned in my country. It advertises a product aimed at the people you teach. The question is, why was it banned? Okay, well, you got the joke. I want to know what happened to my country's sense of humor. I mean, why was it? This passed the market research test. Everyone loved it. They were falling around, they were laughing, they were crying, they were wetting themselves with laughter. They put this on the TV in my country and suddenly it was banned. Why? Criticize the National Health Service. That's great. Any other ideas? I mean, why? What was it that caused this reaction? Too emotional. What is it that's emotional about this video? What is the message? It shows a reality. Actually, what is the reality? Actually, put your hands up if you noticed that Thanksgiving Day came around several days earlier this year than the previous year. Right. You notice that? And it happens every single year. They take 2 days off the previous year. It's because your life is speeding up, my friends. It's something to do with the perception of time, and it's one of the most profound things that we understand about the people we teach. For them, a week is a very long time. For us, it's a flash in the pan. What it means is that if you are the same age as I am, 49, anybody here 49? Well, okay, great. All right. If you're my age, it means that probably, even if I live to 100, 75% of my conscious existence is already over. Think about it. Right? Isn't that interesting? You're alarmed by that. But it's reality, and I want to talk about truth today. And the future is about emotion. And as soon as I talk about the truth, you're reacting emotionally. You know what? This is what we're educating people for. Or is it? You see, I deal with MBAs and graduates and people right at the top of their tree. And I'll tell you, I show this video and they get very emotional. Because it describes exactly what they feel is happening to them. And you know what? If we're going to educate people in a world that appears to be speeding up anyway, we need to start thinking about fundamental questions of what we're actually preparing people for. And I see an obsession with grades in our educational system. I know as a dad I'm also obsessed with grades, so there's nothing wrong with that. But there are other dimensions too. I see a problem in school at the moment. I'm sure this doesn't happen anywhere in America. I'm sure it's just in London. But I see people coming out of school with an inability to cope with rapid change. Partly because they've seen so much change in their own personal lives and their family lives, they can't take any more. I'll tell you this, a child that has seen 10 or 15 different guys move out of the family home, who's seen a traumatic divorce, who's been shunted around from pillar to post, you know what the effect is on such a child's education, right? You know when things are going wrong at home. You can sense it in the class. And such a child is less able to cope with other changes in their own life later on. We know that statistically. I see a failure in vital skills. We'll come back to what some of those are. I see a serious failure in the ability to form long-term relationships. I know this doesn't apply here, of course. But in my country, we will all end up divorced before we've had time to get married. You know what? That's a fact. And already in Britain, some are projecting that soon the majority of children will be formed outside of a permanent marriage relationship or an intendedly permanent marriage relationship. Does it matter? Well, ask the kids whether it matters. I know, I've taught in loads and loads of schools. And I've discovered that the romantic dream is still alive. You start asking kids what they want, and they say, hey, you know what? I kind of got this dream. I'll meet this amazing girl, and I'll still think she's amazing after 5 years, right? We just don't break up because she's that amazing. If we break up, she wasn't amazing. Because as soon as I peeled the layers off the onion, I found crap. Forgive my language, but you know, it wasn't as good as I thought. So I've got this dream. I will find this amazing person, and we'll still be together, right? And the dream is actually 10 years' time. We're still together, right? And maybe if we ever want to have kids or be grandparents or something like that, this is the girl, this is the one, and we're still together, and maybe we're still having happy times when we're retired, right? That is a romantic ideal, and it still lives. And thank God for that. Because actually, if that's all lost, then really we are in trouble. That romantic ideal lives, but the experience is often more painful than that in terms of what they've seen in their own families and those around them. And I'm seeing a fundamental failure to understand what long-term relationships are about, which is becoming more serious as we're living a longer time because people live longer. I don't see much going on in our educational system. Put your hands in the air if you teach about what the ingredients are for a long-term successful relationship and how to be able to tell whether the girl you're going out with is likely to be someone with whom you could have one. Put your hands up if you do. Right. You know, this is a big issue, isn't it? We know it's one of the biggest determinants of actual contentment and happiness is the strength and contentment and stability of people's friendships and relationships. And yet we're not teaching this. We're just teaching grade in math. Okay, failure to understand the secret of happiness. We know what the secrets of happiness are. There's a lot of research on it, but do we teach it? Put your hands up if you teach the secrets of personal contentment. So what we do is we churn people out doing grades, and they kind of assume that by making more grades, like their appraisals and their reports and their numbers and their bottom line spreadsheets and their quarterly analysts and all are satisfied and everything else as well, and shareholder value and bottom line profit, that by succeeding and running after all of these things that they will be happy. You know the truth. There is zero connect between making bottom line profit and shareholder value and personal happiness. We know that. That's the truth. And the truth comes from something else. It comes from things like relationships, usually. I'm a physician. I spent most of my professional life as a doctor looking after people dying of cancer who've been through that video. And you quickly learn what makes you really happy when you've had a difficult conversation with a physician. and some of the trivia starts to melt away, and you're confronted with what's actually ultimately important to you. So here's an example of a skill which is a problem for us. You know what? Well, see, my worry is that you're laughing. See what? But it's a challenge, isn't it? See, here we have. Yeah, that's my job. My job is to be able to go into a business that I know nothing about, or to go into conversation with a client that I've never met before, a company I've never heard of. And while I'll let you into a secret. You see, they think I'm very knowledgeable. I know nothing. But I know someone who does. So what happens is I'm in a cab, I'm in a taxi, I'm on a train, and I'm surfing broadband at about 1/3 of a megabit per second. And while I'm on the call, in the first few seconds of the call, I'm already ransacking their own website to find out more about their company than they can remember themselves. And I'm now Googling them, I'm now chatboarding them, I'm discovering what everybody else is saying about their company, including their analysts, the latest Wall Street Journal report, the Financial Times critique, and what the bulletin boards are saying about the disgruntled staff inside their organization. And I'm just saying, yes, very interesting. And you're saying you get 20 people there. Well, of course, we need to look at... And now I'm already processing. I'm already feeding back to them some of the big issues that I think we should be addressing at their event. And that's happening in less than 3 minutes. The trouble is that if I was to use that skill in your school, I'd be kicked out. I would be expelled for cheating. Because what I'm doing is I'm plagiarizing other people's work. See, life's too short, my friends. Take bird flu and HSBC. HSBC thinks that it's planning right now to be able to survive the loss of 125,000 of its 250,000 staff. People who will not come to work or they're too sick. They have a contingency for that. So you're the chairman of HSBC and you need a report. So you turn to one of your operations directors and you say, I need a bird flu summary of how this illness could impact us. The most suicidally crazy thing for that person to do is to start doing some work from scratch, right? Because half the world's already done it for you. What that guy wants to do, or woman wants to do, is to Google it and find out how many other people, for the sake of the humanity and the future of humankind, bless them, and we will be eternally grateful, have published all of their thinking on this subject online and made it available for the express purpose that life's too short to reinvent stuff. And if someone else has already ransacked every single published paper on this issue and every single economic forecast and has already summarized what every other large bank is currently doing on this issue, then that is the report that I want. I'm not going to print it out as it is and give it to the chairman. I'm going to scan it, text it, contextualize it, put it, integrate it with all the other stuff I've plagiarized, and create a unique synthesized document which will take me less than 33 minutes. Right? But you don't give it to him in 33 minutes or you think you hadn't done any work. So you wait. He said he wanted in a week and you give it to him after 3 days, but it took you 33 minutes. Okay. And that's the future. So as far as I'm concerned, the only pupils I want to examine are pupils who are online with a wireless connection to broadband, sitting in the exam room with their typing skills. I couldn't care less what they can write. I want to know what they can type. And I want them to go online and I'm going to give them a question. The question will be something they know absolutely nothing about. And they've got 30 minutes to produce a 3,000-word report that is correct, authoritative, and unique. Not just with 2 words changed, totally unique. And the more unique and the more authoritative I think it is, the higher the grade I'll give them. Isn't that the kind of thing we want to teach people? So what? What'd you say? Why is it shaky ground? That is the world of business. That, in fact, is the world of university life right now. Well, it's only shaky if you're not sure of the authority of the sources that you're using. But, of course, part of what we should be teaching people is to evaluate the degree of the authority of the source. And that's fundamental. Which is why I get so many emails saying, Dear Dr. Dixon, I cannot use your web page in my assignment. Please, can you tell me when you wrote it? Right? And I get those every single day. And so much so I need to go back and put every single correction and when I did it. And what the reference is for that particular fact. Now that is exactly what we should be teaching people. Now, handwriting is another issue. Put your hands up if you teach people to type. You actually teach them which keys to put on which keyboard. Okay, this is an absolute number one skill. Do you know something? I think you could be sued in years to come if you don't do it. If it's discovered that some child started to develop early repetitive strain injury at your school doing one of your assignments, using Google and things like that, and you didn't teach them which fingers to use, I think you could be liable, as indeed many companies are becoming. And it's a very, very important skill. It's absolutely vital. My daughter Elizabeth is up to about 85 words per minute, which is about right. She needs to be about there, I think, to be equipped for the rest of her life. Speech recognition don't do it. I use speech recognition a lot. The trouble is, it's only good for the first draft. You've still got to edit and fiddle around. So you need keyboard skills, and you're going to need them forever. Fast urban. Urban is the second phase of the future, and it's to do with megacities and profound social and demographic trends, including lifestyle. One thing's clear to me, having just come back from Nigeria, and indeed from my other work in some of the poorest countries of the world, which is about a third of my time, unless we solve the growing contrast between the wealthiest and the very poor in our communities, we will end up with new protest movements, which could make every terrorist and protest movement we have seen in the last decade look insignificant. I've just come back from Nigeria. In Nigeria alone, there are over 100 million children, all of whom will become adult in the next 15 years. All of them see your lifestyle, or they will, at some point, on the billboards that advertise Western products, or glimpses of CNN that they see in a bar or something else. All of them will see your lifestyle. But most of them, my friends, live on $1 a day. I put this question to one of the largest oil companies in the world. I said, we all know Nigeria produces 1/8 of the world's oil. So it's the 8th largest oil producer in the world. I've been saying this for years now. I said, how many of these kids, these 100 million, would need to become militant activists with a feeling of moral passion, strong moral passion, maybe supported by some in the West who also feel deeply some of the injustices of what has happened to the oil wealth in that country? How many of them would it take to close down all oil extraction in the whole of Nigeria for more than a decade? Do you know what the answer is? 50. With machine guns that cost $25 and a stack of bullets that you could buy for $50 and a cigarette lighter and a few putt-putts and an inflatable boat or two, and you do it nicely. And in fact, that is exactly what is happening at the moment, and over a quarter of the oil extraction has just been stopped in the last few weeks in Nigeria. My friends, these are big issues. They will trouble the lives of those who are in education right now for many, many years, unless we put this right. Multi-channel, multi-environment, multi-learning. Of course, it drives us insane if we see one of our kids in class using a BlackBerry when we're trying to teach. Okay, so will you turn your BlackBerries off and your mobile phones and all the other stuff? But the fact is, they're in a different world. They're used to multi-tracking. But then so are you. Who here has been on the phone while doing an email? Come on, confess now. Okay, you're on the phone. Clickety-click, clickety-click. They can hear you if they're... That's the trouble with video phones. It's the ultimate reality check. All right. Okay. Now, how do we measure future educational performance? I think that is a challenge because we've not yet worked out the real value of what it is we're supposed to be teaching, which I've shown with the Google issue. Books, I do believe, have a future. I believe in them. And one of the reasons for that is something fundamental to teaching, and it's a big problem for you. When you're listening to me at the moment, you're using your ears, which have 112K bandwidth. That's the maximum data that you can get down that pipe if you know about broadband, okay? It's narrow band. But it's true. That's why, even though I'm English and you are American, we use the same language, but if I go much faster than 140 words per minute, I dissolve into incoherent babble. Because I can understand what I'm saying, but you can't decode it. Your maximum decode is about 120 words per minute, right? But if you're reading a big report, if you've picked up a copy of the Wall Street Journal, you know what? You can scan that at 5,000 to 10,000 words a minute because you have got up to 3 terabits of data going into your optic nerve. That's amazing. So what it means is that what's visually there has a fantastic more efficiency than anything else. And it's the reason why books work, because you can scan a book, the text, you can scan at about 5,000 words per minute. My books are made to be read in about 20 minutes. Please don't spend any longer than that. Please, please. Because life's too short. You know, I'll tell you how to start. You start in the middle, you work front and back, okay? That's how to do it. And if you get stuck, read the conclusion, like he did. Okay. See, I didn't make it to be read from the beginning. It never actually occurred to me that anybody would. Because I always cheat when I read. But the fact is, that's another skill which we're teaching people, which is to scan text, right? The days of reading text from the beginning to end are over. History, gone, last century. The days of being able to dip in and out of high resolution stuff, yes. So being able to manage a big newspaper. Again, another exam test, I would say. You throw down the newspaper, you give them a copy of the Wall Street Journal, and they have less than 8 minutes to read the whole thing. Absolute maximum. In fact, I prefer to give them 3. That's it. And then the test comes, and we see what they've learned. Because the whole idea about rich scanning is you know what you don't know. See, I know what, oh yeah, there was an article about more things on the Nile Delta, but I didn't read too much, in Nigeria. I didn't read too much about it. I just read the headline and 3 or 4 words. I knew what I didn't know. I knew there was a huge story. It was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. I knew there'd been a big blast down there, and it was getting worse, and the president was about to make a speech about it. That's all. But that's enough for me to answer my 3-minute quiz. And it's being able to scan, and scanning is easier on printed stuff than it is online. And that's why books will survive, paper survives. The genetic revolution will shape your pupils' lives. We're just at the start in the first 2 minutes, actually. We already have salmon that will grow to 4 times their normal length in 12 months with the use of human genes. We're educating for longer life. The big question is how long? I wonder if you know how long your pupils are actually going to live. At the moment, today, in the United States, there are 75,000 people over the age of 100. But in the next 5 years or 6, that will rise to 140,000 centenarians. In fact, I'd like to revise the definition of a senior citizen as someone who's over the age of 100. I think everyone under that is in their second life. You know what? Adolescence used to be 0 to 18. Childhood, 0 to 18. If you notice, it's now 0 to 35. That's, well, if you... Because they still wanted to come back to have you pay for the 2nd or the 3rd degree. And when they get into trouble, they bring their laundry home at the age of 33, right? And people are having their children later and later, which for me is a sign of adulthood. So, because now they have to work because they've got responsibilities. Up until that time, they were playing around, thinking about careers, settling down. But now the big things come. So, in fact, what have we got? A kind of extended childhood apprenticeship and more education going on through 2nd, 3rd, and 4th degrees up until, let's say, the age of, say 30. And then we've got first lifers, 30 to 65. And then second lifers, 65 to 100. And that's it. So people suddenly realize, hey, I've retired, but man, I'm bored out of my brains. I'm going to start another business. And that's exactly what's happening all across America. It's not just because they're poor, it's because they're restless. And you know what? If they don't start businesses, what do? They start charitable foundations. They give time to the Red Cross. They go and join the Rotary Club. They do anything other than just sit and play golf. Because actually, it's a fundamental part of human nature is this issue of purpose, which comes through looking to add value to those around us. So here's another issue. When will your students actually start feeling old? Put your hands up if you know that you're biologically at least a decade younger than your parents were at the same age. Put your hands up. Okay. What about your students? Now, here are some issues about aging. Did you know that we already have, steady. Did you know that we already have the technology to grow new replacement teeth for you inside your own mouth using your own tissue? Put your hands up if you knew that. We're already starting to do it in animals. Did you know that we have the technology already? In fact, it started here at Harvard and also in London, We already have the technology to rebuild your heart after a heart attack using your bone tissue. Put your hands up if you knew that. Did you know that we have the technology to repair the brain of someone who's had a stroke? Animal studies are in advanced stages using your own tissue. Did you know that we now have the technology to repair the spinal cord using your own tissue? The first studies have already begun. Someone has already written to me from America who's had this from here, has already had it done with good success. And did you know where we get these brain cells from to help repair your brain? Up your nose. There's a little bit of your brain. There's a tiny hole in your skull, and there's a little bit of your brain that comes down through it. It's your smelling center. It's the bit that you smell with. And as you get older, put your hands up if you had a smelly cheese in your house, and your kids are coming and say, "Oh man, take that cheese out. I can't live in this house anymore. It's too smelly." What's happened is it's because your brain cells in your nose are starting to deteriorate. So you need stronger and stronger smells to give any kind of flavor at all. And meanwhile, your grandchildren sort of are absolutely appalled because they can't. it sort of totally overwhelms their smell center, right? Well, if you get what you can do is you can put an instrument, a surgical instrument, up your nose, and we can take away the smell center. Sorry about that, but inside that, it's stuffed full of adult stem cells, which could be used to repair brain tissue or spinal cord, or in fact develop into various other tissues as well. Amazing what's going on here. I'm telling you the past, you tell me tomorrow. I'm not here to tell you the future, you tell me the future. I just wanted to confront us with what we already know about the past. What would you give me for a drug that did that? It's made by a company called Altion. It's in clinical trials right now. And what it does is it removes the blood pressure problem permanently. It restores the natural elasticity of your arteries and does it very successfully in mice and rats. And it lasts, you take it for 4 weeks, and it lasts for hopefully a decade. Altion. I have no financial interest in this organization. Okay, listen, this is really important for your pupils. And for someone to teach them in class. This drug works in mice and rats. And it not only does that, but it increases the elasticity of the mice and rat skin. In fact, the mouse or the rat gets a total body lift. It's not just the face where the wrinkles go, but also even the tail. You know how they... I know, at this point you're thinking, whoa. Listen. You can go and look at the studies yourself. Just type in Altion onto Google and go and have a look. I'll tell you how it works if you want. Do you want to know how it works? Okay. This is, right. Yeah, and then I'll tell you the bad news. Okay. Oh gosh, we're going to have to be very quick. Layers of elastin slide against each other. That's how things stretch. Okay. When sugar molecules get gummed in there, it's like chewing gum. They can't do that. This drug removes those sugar molecules and releases them into the bloodstream, so the elastin starts to slide again and you eat the sugar as food. Ingenious. After you give it for 4 weeks, the effect is gone, it has happened, and you can stop the drug for a decade. In these mice and rats, they discovered that if you tied weights onto the tail of an arthritic rat, which is 2 years old, that's about 60 for a rat. 2 years old rats with blood pressure problems, you tie weights and the rat's tail will snap. It's a dead rat. The rat's tail will snap like tissue. But if you give the drug, you can add weights and the tail stretches, take the weights off, the tail goes back. So they restore the elasticity of the skin. Listen, my friends, it has some limited clinical effect, it seems, on those with severe heart disease, but it does not affect human skin yet. The point I'm making is this. I've just shown you a few things. A 15-year-old in your class has a life expectancy at the moment of about another 70 years in America. They're an upper socio-demographic group. Believe me, they have more years than the average. Okay? They have a life expectancy of another 70 years. My friends, I want to ask you this. Put your hands up if you think that medicine could offer that child at least an extra decade using some of these kinds of technologies at some point in the next 60 years. Put your hands up. Now, my friends, We are at a very, very significant time in human history. I haven't got time to dwell on it, but your actuarial forecasts of how long you and your friends and your family and your pupils are going to live are obviously wrong. And you know that, and so does everybody else. The government can't talk about it very much, because if they do, then the balance sheets of corporate America disappear. And that's a problem. Because you start increasing even 3 years on the General Motors average life expectancy of their staff, and you can imagine what happens. We have animals that don't age. We know that there's some whales that don't age in the normal way, just like sturgeons and turtles. It's a very interesting area. My friends, watch out. This is all going to be happening in the lifetime of the people in your classes. Fast, urban, tribal. Tribalism is the most powerful force in the world today. It's more powerful than atomic bombs or the entire military might of all the world's old superpowers or new ones. Tribalism at its extreme end brings terror, and at its smallest end just brings sectarian and culture clash. The fact is that tribalism is the most powerful positive force in the world today. Tribalism gives you family, community, identity, team, brand, culture, street, neighborhood, nation. Tribalism gives us school, loyalty, and every tribe, every school is a tribe, every class is a tribe, and tribalism is at the heart of education. Encouraging tribalism, teams working with each other or against each other in competition. Tribalism is the reason why schools work as against home education. I'm not saying home education doesn't, but with home education they're only part of one tiny tribe. School gives a child an opportunity to belong to many, many tribes and to find their way in their world. Every successful company builds tribes, and the stronger the tribe, the stronger the brand, the stronger the brand, the stronger the company. If we're going to educate our kids for tomorrow, then they need to understand the history of tribes on a global context. It's not enough to know about cultural distinctives. We need to know why. And it's the why which is the most elusive thing. I hear people telling me, I just don't understand these Arabs. They don't understand democracy. I don't understand why it is that as a result of publishing a few silly cartoons that were a bit ill-judged, somehow we got people killing each other all over the world. Say, well, you don't understand tribes. You don't understand history. We need to go back into history, as Churchill says, to understand our future. So we need to be teaching deeply cultural history if we're going to make sense for people of the world in which they live in future. And that cultural exchange visits can be a very, very important part of that. If someone says to me, I just don't understand, they often say to me, like, it's the fault of the other people. They're just weird. And my instant reaction is a problem with you. If I don't understand someone, it's because I haven't taken enough time to get inside their skin and inside their minds and inside their hearts. I want to understand a suicide bomber. I'm sorry to say that. Maybe you think that's an extreme and even almost an obscenely terrible thing to say. But let me say this. It is only as you understand and get inside the mind and the heart of a suicide bomber who blows himself up on a London tube that will have any possibility of arresting some of the underlying forces which are giving rise to generation after generation of young men and women who want to follow in their footsteps. It's the same as understanding why people murder or they kill or anything else. We have to understand what is going on in our society in order to be able to make intelligent responses and to prepare people of the future. Fast, urban, tribal, universal, that's globalization. And of course it's developing a worldview which is global from the start. I'm horrified by people who come out of schools, high schools, universities around the world who seem to have no real connection with anything other than the town where they lived and a few baseball teams or football teams in my country. You can have foresight, but foresight without insight is useless. We need insight as well into the why these things are happening. Not what might happen, but why. Outsourcing is a very big issue. And outsourcing will be driven by education. We already heard a little bit about it. Actually, if you look at engineering diploma holders, that's 16 million rather than just 870,000. And if you look at software professionals, you find that 840,000 of them emerged from Indian universities, most of them with very high grades. That compares to only 6,500 in my country last year. We need to prepare people for virtual management, virtual team, virtual working. Many of the people you teach will be people that I perhaps talk to later on, or typical of them. And in their adult lives, many of their their forebears are already spending 6 weeks a year cruising at 35,000 feet, making globalization work. I often say, put your hands in the air if you've doubled the amount of travel that you've done in the last 2 years. They all put their hands up. Some of you too. I say, right, so what's your plan when you're doing 12 weeks a year at 35,000 feet? And the year after that, what happens then? We're still playing at globalization. We've yet to understand how to manage our global village. And we need new models, new methods of managing people. And that would include Clintonesque type ability to communicate. Clinton, I think, was nothing to do about his politics. But Clinton is one of the most adept performers I've ever seen in terms of the ability to help people to feel connected with him on the other end of a TV lens, even if there's 50 million of them watching the same broadcast. Now, that kind of skill is going to be a #1 career-setting winner in the future for obvious reasons. The ability to command empathy, personality, to project passion and enthusiasm over very long distances. And that's why these kinds of virtual environments are really important. These kind of things where kids in many different towns and cities can all link together in virtual communities. And the technology is here, it costs nothing. This is my own studio in my own house with the four images. You can run this 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. It costs you nothing, of course, just using broadband. This could easily be your school with nine different schools in other parts of the world all joining together in a virtual environment. Meetings will always matter, but it's easy to imagine a world where we do 30% less of them with a 60% increase in productivity. I do believe we have a profound requirement to bring business into the classroom and bring a few realities there. Now, what about digital memory inside your head? This issue of knowledge, can we extend it? Yes, we can. We already have the technology to send a thought from one human being to another, and it's already happening in mice and rats. Chips are fused with brain tissue, and brain tissue recognizes instinctively chips. It grows into the surface of it, so that you can communicate using brain and chip and receive information using brain and chip. And I say we have mice and rats that are communicating brain signals to each other, communicating when they're thirsty or hungry, and the other colleagues on the other side of the world in other cages are responding appropriately. Now, so can we extend beyond that? What about this sort of holy grail of being able to have a plug-in module to your brain? Well, we're there already, but perhaps not in that way. And of course, I'm talking about, again, things like Google, the fact that using Google desktop search, this morning, I was able to search 250,000 files on my own hard disk in 2.5 seconds. So I can file stuff I've never even read. That's what I'm doing at the moment. People send me emails, I don't even read them, because they're stuff that I know I'm putting in a place where it's part of my data pool. It's a document which has formed part of my knowledge pool. And if I'm on the move and I'm disconnected in any way, it's just specialist areas, I can find that within 1 second, 2 seconds. Even though I've never read it and I didn't even know it was there. Up it all comes, pouring out. Fast, urban, tribal, universal, radical. Radical is about the death of politics and the rise of single-issue activism. Now, if I was to ask your pupils how many of them belong to a political party or are deeply interested in politics, I wonder how many would put their hands up. Do you think it would be the majority? No. Voting levels have been notoriously low, both sides of the pond, for the last few years, with rare exceptions. Young people are not connected with politics in the way that we are. But even in our generation, less than there were. The fact of the matter is that passion is in single-issue activism. And it might be the abortion issue right now. It could be GM food if it's the other side of the Atlantic. It could be the Gulf War. It could be a human rights issue. It could be whatever it is. It could be gun law. Whatever it is, single-issue activism is where the passion is. Put your hands in the air if you, in the last 2 years, have signed a petition, you've sent an email to someone protesting about something or other, you've written a letter, you've joined a campaigning group or something like that. Put your hands up. Put your hands in the air if you've paid a subscription to a political party in the last 12 months. Okay, politics is almost dead here. It's almost irrelevant to NAIS. You've just shown me that. But the passion is in single-issue activism. And that's where it is in your pupils too. And it doesn't matter what it is, but the lesson of history is that single issues tend to become regulations, and many of them impact education. Now, we take a deep breath. You say, how on earth do we live in this crazy world that's so fast we can hardly think? So urban with its profound social and political challenges. So tribal that sometimes it feels like our world is falling into pieces. So universal that sometimes it feels like our own identities and cultures are just being swept away. So radical that tiny numbers of activists seem to be able to wield unimaginable power. Well, the answer is we need ethics, and we need them like never before. They are the bedrock of our future, and by that I mean every passion that there is within you. The reason why you get out of bed in the morning, it could be to do with spirituality, the faith that you have, that sense of ultimate destiny, that sense of responsibility and stewardship, the idea of passing on humankind to another generation, and the world in which we live in a way that's fit to live. Whatever it is that gets you out of bed in the morning, this is what it's all about. And here the question is this. What is the definition of real success? How do we measure that? And now we're back to that video of that guy who was being flown out of like the cannon through that hospital window, who's been driven by a temporary view of success, which clearly was inadequate. And he's one of those many, many people who's just running, achieving success, fame, fortune, a lot of wealth, big cars, huge pension funds, and some accolades from colleagues. And then after a while begins to realize that in his personal life he's been a total failure. None of his children speak to him. He's not on speaking terms with either his former wives. The girl is living with him, doesn't want, and not even sure she wants to live with him anymore. Okay, his score on the golf's pretty good. But he's got questions about what the success really was. And I believe that if education is about anything, it must be about helping people to connect with the passions they have for learning, for achievement, and to make what is important for them happen in their world. This is a British survey, which doubtless you'll tell me has no relevance whatsoever to the United States of America. But it's disturbing nevertheless, because actually I've shown this to many, many international audiences, and most of them say, well, I think you'd have the same in my country as well. You might think the figures would be different here, but I don't think they're that different. We could argue about the percentages in the US, and I don't have an equivalent study. But let me just say this. There's an awful lot of 30 to 40-year-olds that have been through your schools that now want out of business life. 60% in the UK of 25 to 35-year-olds feel unfulfilled in their careers. You know, our oldest son, John, has just got a great job in a new IT startup, doing well, hitting their numbers every week. A meteoric rise, really buzzy. He's been there for 12 weeks. Phones me up the other day, says, Dad. I say, hi, John, how are you? Fine. I'm really enjoying life, but I'm thinking of downsizing and getting a life. He's 24 years old, 16 weeks into his first job. My friends, it's a whole generation of people coming at the moment into Harvard, into London Business School to do MBAs from all over the world. In the past, 10 years ago, they just wanted to get onto the board of the corporation. Now, they're not so worried about that. They want to be well off. Yes, they want to have choices, but they want to have a life. They want both, right? The conversation has changed. And one of the reasons it's changed is because of the new obsession with work-life balance. There's a generation growing up who's been there and done that, and they've been through their own relationship problems within their own families, and they've seen it, and they don't want to live through that in their own lives. And they're saying family is really important. Relationships really important. Whatever you mean by family. But people matter. And this is usually about friends and family rather than golf. It's a desire for relationships. And it's in second generation educated people. You do not see this in the first call center operatives in India who are the first generation to go to university. They're hungry to work. But in the second or third generation, have been there, done that. If Dad was educated at Harvard, he came back to India, he made a pile of money. Those kind of kids have seen through it all. They've moved on. Now, this is really important. Here's another interesting thing. These figures are from the United States, but they're typical of my country, most of Europe, and indeed most of the world. 6 out of 10 Americans work for nothing. Volunteering is booming. The average gift of time given to an organization is 200 hours per year. I calculated that's 20 billion hours per year. If you value each hour as the average wage, that's the equivalent of 12% of the Fed budget, or 4.5% of American GDP. That warms my heart. Put your hands up if in the last 2 years you've given time to things that you really believe in, not because you were paid to, but just because you knew you had to do it. Put your hands up. You might be involved in the church, the synagogue, the mosque, goodness knows what, shaking a tin for the tsunami disaster. But this passion is alive. It's strong. And I will learn more about each of you, my friends, over lunch by asking you what it is that you put your hand about. And what's the story? Because there's always a personal story. And I will learn more about you and the real passions that you drive you than I will through 100 years working in your school. In that simple conversation of 3 minutes. And you know what? Those passions are there in almost every parent who sends their kids to your schools. Those passions will be there in every one of your pupils that leave your schools. They're there in every shareholder in America. It's a fundamental part of our genetic code. We cannot help ourselves. There is this intuitive spark within us that wants to be involved in community, which is what these passions are all about. That's why you volunteer. You're giving time to community because you believe it will make the world a better place. And that is an absolutely fundamental part of our educational process, is to help people tune in to these passions that are going to drive them the whole of their adult lives, well into retirement and way into the grave, and maybe far beyond in the legacies that they leave for future generations. This is the hallmark of education. Mature education, I believe, is education which actually puts us right at the very forefront of our bedrock values, because we know that's going to be one of the most important values for them in their future life. Not the grade. It's the passion they have for the causes they want to change. That makes the difference. Now, I'm not devaluing all the other stuff. I'm saying it's just important. So, while, a lot of business is still stuck in a last century time warp, still meandering on with all the rhetoric of shareholder value and bottom line profit and all the rest of it, the conversation is well moved on to personal happiness, work-life balance, relationships, make a difference in the community, and indeed in the wider world. Put your hands up if you have had a heated conversation or a passionate conversation about what the United States of America should do regarding Iraq over the next year. Put your hands up. Now, I have asked this question in many countries around the world, and everyone puts their hands up. Now, I ask a question, but put your hands up if you know someone in Iraq right now. And that's the difference. Because all of you are personally involved. Because all of you are sitting next to someone who knows someone who's there right now. But I want you to know something. I know that even if the US was not so deeply involved in terms of your own families, I know that your hands would still be up. And I'll tell you how I know that. Because in every other country of the world, I ask the same question, the hands go up. And then I ask another question. I say, who here knows someone in Iraq or has got family in Iraq? Most of the countries of the world haven't any, but they're still passionate. I say, what's it to do with you? Mind your own blooming business. Do you know anybody in Iraq? No. Have you got any family members in Iraq? No. Do you know anybody who knows anybody who knows anybody who knows anyone? Anyone near Iraq? No. So why do you get so stirred up about it? The reason, my friends, is because not only are we kind of genetically programmed to care about our own naked self-interest, and also the people that we love around us, but also we're genetically programmed to be involved in our communities. We just can't help ourselves. And we are genetically programmed to be global in our outreach, in the broadest sense, to have an interest in our wider world, in things which have no immediate relevance even to our communities in which we live. It's just a fact of life. And it's that which more than anything requires us, demands us to be global in the same way in our education. It's not, oh, the world's gone globalized, so we ought to produce a global syllabus and do a few cultural exchange trips. No. It's because it's in the genetic code of everyone we educate anyway, or will be, and will drive their futures. So I believe, in conclusion then, that our slogan for education is this. It's very simple, that we educate for a better world. We educate for a better world for the individual, for their families, for their future. We educate for a better world for our communities. And we educate because we believe that in doing so, we are laying the foundations for a better kind of future for the whole of humanity. We're educating because we believe that the people we educate are history makers, that they will shape the destiny of this great nation and of many others, that they will lay the bedrock and the foundations and the values which will sustain the whole of humankind for the next hundreds of years. The decisions that they make will be talked about for generations, and that, I believe, is a noble calling. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. We have a lot to fuel our engines for. We have a 15-minute break back here at 9:45. We are on a tight schedule, but it'll take us a little while to recover. And thank you for your good thoughts. And see everyone back here at 9:45.